Hello everyone, and welcome to the RV Inspection and Care channel. I'm Dwayne and I'm a Level 2 certified RV inspector. Today we're going to be talking about how to defrost your RV refrigerator and freezer. You know, years ago, even residential refrigerators and freezers required a defrosting process, but modern fridges today, well, they've advanced and they're usually frost-free, so it's not an issue. But with RV refrigerators, there is an issue with frost from time to time, very often, requiring you to defrost it. Now, first of all, let's talk about why do you need to defrost a refrigerator? Well, with RV refrigerators, it's often because of the time of year. In other words, in the summertime, there's more hot and humid air. And so when you open the refrigerator or freezer, that hotter, more humid air goes in, and the moisture in the air is then trapped inside. When you close the door, it adheres to the walls. And so that just keeps building up and building up over time, especially in the freezer. And it forms ice that just keeps moving into the RV freezer compartment. So anytime you're opening a refrigerator door, you're going to have a possibility of frost beginning to form. So those people that open their doors a lot, well, you're just inviting more frost more quickly. Another reason why frost can develop is because of the size of RV refrigerators and freezers. You know, they're much smaller than residential fridges. And so what do we try to do? Well, we all try to put more in there than we really should. We try to pack it as much as we can to have what we want available to us. Well, air movement is essential in refrigerators to keep frost from forming. So when you pack an RV refrigerator or freezer, you're cutting down the air movement. And so that's another major reason why frost forms. Now, all of this is not really a big issue until it starts to affect the performance, the efficiency of the refrigerator and freezer. And you'll know that because the temperature inside starts to go down. It's not really keeping things as cold as it should. At that point, you have no other alternative. You have to defrost the refrigerator and the freezer. Now, the safest way to do this, there's no question, is to just open the doors, take everything out, and then just let the air go into the compartments, the refrigerator and freezer compartments, and slowly cause all of that ice buildup to melt. That's the safest way, but it's also the longest method to use to defrost your refrigerator and freezer. There are quicker ways to do it, and so Sherry and I have found ways that works for us. If you choose to do it this way, it's up to you, but I'm just sharing what we do that seems to work well. We can get the whole process done in 30 minutes from beginning to end, and our refrigerator is a fairly good sized refrigerator for an RV. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk about what you do. Before I do that, though, let's talk about one big thing you don't want to do. And you don't want to take a sharp or metallic object and go picking away at the ice in there on the walls or on the fins of the refrigerator. If you do that, you could cause serious damage and major repairs that could take place. You might even kill the refrigerator altogether if you're a little too aggressive with it. So don't do that under any circumstances. But now let's start with the first thing that Sherry and I do. First of all, we turn the fridge off. The next thing we do is we put pots of water on the stove, as you see here, and start getting them hot. Then we open the refrigerator and we take all those items in the freezer out You don't have to do that in the refrigerator, but you have to take everything out of the freezer. Nothing can be left in there. So what do you do with that? You don't want to just leave it on the counter or the table. So we use insulated bags like you see here. And we even take it a little step further, and here you can see we put blue ice in there along with the items from the freezer. You could even use just regular ice too. Anything to keep those items as cold as possible while they're out of the freezer. Now the next step is you go into the refrigerator and clear a path to the fins, because you want the fins defrosting too, and you don't want too many cold things around it. So you clear a path to that, and that way the heat from the pots up in the freezer can also radiate down to the fins and get the ice off of them as well. Now, once you do that, you may still need to remove a few items from the refrigerator, maybe things like mayonnaise or yogurt, or, you know, something that's temperature sensitive. You might want to take that out and put it in the insulated bags, but in general, the other stuff, just leave that right in the refrigerator. Now, it's time to go get your hot water, and it doesn't have to be boiling water, you know, it just needs to be hot. And before you put that in the freezer, put some cloths or towels on the floor of the freezer and on a shelf if you're going to put a pot on the shelf. And these towels accomplish two things. Number one, if the side walls defrost quickly, the water coming down will be absorbed by the towels. Secondly, you won't do any damage to the freezer itself, to the floor, to the shelf, by a hot pot of water being set on it. So you have a little insulation underneath it. Now you could use chamois too. Some people use chamois underneath as well, whatever works well for you. Now once you have the hot water inside on the towels, close the freezer door. And we generally let it sit for about 15 minutes or so. Somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes, we find everything is defrosted in the freezer. And as I said before, usually that radiates down to the fins, and they're defrosted as well. But if they're not, and sometimes they aren't, you know, maybe it's really built up on the fins for whatever reason, there's a second step that we sometimes take. But if you choose to do this, be very careful with it. And that is, we'll use a hair dryer. But we never use it on the high setting, put it on the low setting, and use it responsibly, you know. In other words, don't just put it right up close onto the fins. Stay a little bit away and keep that air moving. Never stop in one area and heat up one area too much. Just keep the air moving on the fins from a reasonable distance, and it speeds up the whole process, and before you know it, the fins are nice and frost free. So now at this point, you've got everything defrosted, but you need to wipe down the walls before you put anything back in. Make sure there's no moisture left on those walls. If not, you're just starting the next round of frost on those walls as soon as you freeze it there. So wipe them down very carefully, and at that point, close the doors, turn the fridge back on. When it starts to get a little cool in there, go ahead and put your items back in, and before you know it, they'll be nice and cold again, and the refrigerator will be functioning, and the freezer will be functioning like it should. Now let me just say, this whole issue of defrosting RV fridges and freezers is not usually a problem for weekend RVers, because you don't keep the refrigerator working long enough for this to happen. So usually if you go out for a weekend or a week, by the time you're done, you come home, you open up the refrigerator and freezer, take everything out, you really should leave the doors open during the time that it's in storage so that there's nice air flowing in and out. And then you'll never have a problem with defrosting your RV fridge and freezer. But for those of us that are part-time RVers or full-time RVers, yeah, we're going to see it, especially in the summer months. And from time to time, it's just going to be something we have to deal with. So hopefully what I shared with you today will be beneficial for you. Hopefully the way we do things might have given you a couple of ideas that you might be able to use. At any rate, that's it for now. Have safe and happy travels, my friends. Until next time.